Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? It's Geoff Mosher, Adam Caplan for another Inside the Birds midweek edition. Got some transactions, got some player information. But Adam, you know what we really have this week on Inside the Birds? We have disagreement week. I've branded it disagreement week on Inside the Birds. All right. It started with the post-game show where you and I saw the run pass ratio thing a little.
People liked it, but real quick, people like that. Because they said we're too milquetoast sometimes. So they miss us arguing and fighting. I'm like, all right.
We gave the crowd what they want. No, we were very organic with it. And I think we both respected each other's points. And the same way.
I think you're high, but no.
Well, maybe, but we'll see. Q&A, Quentin Michael, Jason Avant had some really good spirited, again, respectful. We're not like trying to be ESPN first take or anything like that. No disrespect. We're different. But they had some really interesting differing perspectives on whether you consider that a good, is it just a good, every win's a good win or not? And B, on the Nick Sirianni sideline antics behavioral issue that's dominating, that dominated the 24 to 48 hours after. So it was spirited, it was informative. And I sort of found myself like almost with my discussion with you on run pass ratio, like really respecting both sides of it, weighing with it. I got a text, by the way, after our post-game show from a friend of ours who watches the show. And this friend said that listening to us go back and forth was very difficult for them to even decide on their own, because we made really good points, and it's like you go on one way and then you're going the other way. And at the end, that's, maybe that's what we're missing a lot in American discourse, right? Like balance, understanding each other, feeling how you feel, but understanding the side. And Quentin and Jason did a really good job hashing it out, how they felt about those things and just seeing it differently.
The cool thing about those guys, obviously they play together, so you know each other, is that when we came up with the idea of Q&A, we wanted an offensive defensive perspective. I just thought, where else could you get this? We looked at who we knew, what former players, and it just was so unique. They're still connected to the game, obviously, very well. And obviously, we know how much they love the Eagles, but they're also willing to be critical. You can't work for us, and we're not looking for cheerleaders. Like, that's not what we want.
Right.
Yes, they want them to win. We get that they're former players, but they're not like going to say, oh, hey, they're not going to throw something under the rug. If they see it and it's not good, they're going to say it. And boy, they've been lighting up some smoke this season, man. They've because it's let's face it, before we move on here, the team is not quite as good as at least I could only speak for me. It's team's clearly not as good as I thought. I obviously missed something. I know it's early. I get that. And they do have a nice schedule. But there's something missing here. I cannot put my finger on it. I just can't, because there's too many issues.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because Quentin made a really good point in Q&A, right? He says a lot of times games look bad, and he's right. And then you go back and you watch the All-22, and you get a better understanding of why some things look bad, some things look good, right? And he said even watching this game, you can see, the Browns did some good things. You have to give them the credit, especially defensively up front. Their exotic fronts we talked about going into the game. A couple of things offensively that other teams have used against the Eagles continue to work. But he said it doesn't always look as bad. But then I took that also. I agreed. I think that I found occasions just going through it, Adam, where I thought that there was meat left on the bone. I think you made that remark in the post-game show. It seemed like there was. And there was. And meat on the bone meant like you may have made a decent play. There could have been a better one. Or you didn't make a play, but you were only a hair off. You really could have. In any one given game, that could really affect the outcome. But if 6 weeks in, you feel like meat is constantly left on the bone, 5 games, then that is emblematic of a bigger issue. You're not the proverbial just a hair away, because you're continuing to be off in 1, 2, or 3 important areas all the time. And to your point, that is what has made the Eagles not looking like what we think they should look like.
Yeah, and I know I was talking to someone who used to work for Eagles high up in personnel over the years, and who told me he still has an 8 or 9 win team. I'm like, where are you getting at? And he went over it, and then he had me thinking when we went over defense. I was like, I think when you look at it that way, that yes, they have talented players, but a lot of them have not arrived yet. Jalen Carter's not there yet. He's not consistent enough. You need to see it game in, game out. We know where Jordan Davis is. He's clearly not good enough. DeJean is a rookie. It's promising. It's promising. Quinyon Mitchell, very promising, but you can't say he's arrived yet.
Right.
We all agree. Most of us would agree. He's probably going to be a very good football player, but he's not there yet. But he is sort of had a schedule, but we can't say he's arrived yet. So if you go through their defense, you could see the inconsistency. When this guy put it this way, when we went over the roster, it's like, okay, you've convinced me. I clearly overvalued the defensive talent. I don't know why I did, and I know it's early. Maybe they'll come together. We think they have good coaching on defense, and then offensively, they're just look. Barkley didn't have a good game. We'll get into that. I'm sure over the week we'll get into that with Greg when we do go inside the tape. He had some issues in that game, no question about it. He just got to play better.
Mm-hmm.
They need an intermediate passing game. I don't know if they're ever going to have it with Hurts as quarterback. He loves to throw the deep ball. Greg called us out last week. He said things are going to be better because Jalen's going to get AJ back and they're going to throw the ball deep. Wouldn't you know it? That's what they did.
Yeah.
But this is a flawed team. I guess me and Pacheco both at 11-6. I won't change at 11-6, but I'm starting to get that sinking feeling that it's going to be 9 or 10 wins instead of 11.
Wow. Okay. Hey, listen, we always say don't change in September, wait
I'm
it
not
out.
changing.
And you're not. You didn't, but
Schedule's too
you've
good.
clearly seen it. I get it. I get it. It's hard to see the Eagles right now. You can't give them the games you were always going to give them, right? Like even the Giants coming up Sunday.
That's the
should
point.
be formidable. And
Yep.
there are some games where you thought, whether it's Baltimore or Pittsburgh or maybe even Cincinnati, who's getting together offensively, that you thought, all right, the Eagles can win that game. Now you may look at it and say that's going to be a really tough ask if you can't score against these defenses and you're still having trouble offensively. So I understand why you would do it. And by the way, they could win 10 or 11 games and still not really be. The whole point was to rebuild yourself as a Super Bowl contender this year, not build up to something. It was to fix the flaws from last year's slide and be one of those top teams in the NFC. And right now they don't look like it.
And I'm not
That's right now.
And usually you have to wait 4 to 6 games before you really know what a team is.
Right.
And the Eagles now have played 5 games. I think I have a pretty good idea where they are. They're flawed. The coaches are still trying to figure things out on both sides of the football. It doesn't mean by week 12 or 13 that they won't be a top 3, top 4 team in the NFC.
Mm-hmm.
They could if a lot of things play out. I'm just a little bit underwhelmed. I can't put my finger on because I can't say, okay, oh boy, this is a real problem. If we were doing we may actually do a mid-season show where we break down everything we've seen and kind of give where the state of the football team, which might be a good idea. But we're only 5 games in. But I do think I don't think we know we see flaws on both sides of the football. The question is, can they be corrected and get to where you were talking about, where the organization, football operations wise, they thought they were up here and they're right here if you watch this on YouTube. And I don't know if they're going to get that high yet. I don't know. I'm a little concerned.
I'm with you. I'm with you. And I think that they give you every reason to be concerned every game that they play. Speaking of, I wonder, is the NFL concerned about the Eagles as we get into
How about
some
that?
of the news around them as they flex them out of the 425 spot? I actually thought that was going to be an interesting game only because the Bengals have so many. It's almost like they're similar teams. They've been underwhelming to their fans, but they both have great wide receiver weapons. I mean, the Bengals, the Eagles, you got high profile quarterbacks. You have maybe 2 of the best receivers 4 of the best receivers in the league, and yet struggling defensively, both of them. I don't know. The storyline itself seemed saucy enough, along with the high profile players, to stay in the 4 o'clock slot, but it's not.
Yeah. So this look, I get part of it. The number 1 and number 2 picks overall, quarterbacks are facing each other. Both are having really good success. Caleb Williams was phenomenal last week against the Jaguars, and Jaden Daniels has been good just about every week, particularly the last 4 games. But yeah, the thing is, no matter what happens this week, both teams are guaranteed to be over 500. Whereas if the Eagles and Bengals, the Bengals will be under 500 no matter what. The best they could be is 3-4, and the Eagles, if they lose, will be 500. So
Right.
if you mix it all up, the 2 young quarterbacks, I get it. But if you would have told me this before the season started, I would have said you're out of your mind. There's no way that's going to happen. Well, it's happening.
I'm with you, man. It is crazy. So, by the way, just so people understand, that's the week 8, not this coming Sunday, but the following Sunday.
They have to do it.
Right.
Yes, they have to do it the Tuesday before the next week. They have till it could be at any time. There's no it has by 4 p.m. Eastern. They usually use 4 p.m. Eastern as a deadline, but they like to do it late morning, early afternoon. But yeah, the flex schedule is great. I get it. And by the way, for those of us who hate having to do a post game show at 7:30, we're off the hook. We could do it at 4:15 or 4:25.
There you go. And by the way, like you said, adding to the fact that if you would have said that game's going to get kicked out, you'd say, heck no. If someone says it's getting kicked out by Bears Commanders, you're like, what? But listen,
Exactly.
it does make sense. There's a lot of intrigue with Caleb Williams playing well the last 3 weeks, and Jaden Daniels, obviously the early rookie of the year contender. This is going to be a great game. And, whoever wins,
Could be.
maybe Caleb plays really well and gets to steal it for a week where people start to talk about him as the rookie of the year, because they've now got themselves back into the race there in the NFC North, or at least for a wild card. The Bears have, by the way they
I'm
play.
intrigued. Yep,
Yeah,
I'm intrigued. Yeah, yeah, Bears are definitely the wild card. They're 4-2. I think the Commandos are 4-2. The Bears have had a cake schedule. Hey, but you know what? You play, as Bill Parcells would say, we play who are on our schedule.
that's right.
So we're held to that standard, and we'll see what happens.
There you go. Oh, by the way, I have to bring this up, Adam, because
Okay.
it's schedule related. This
All right.
week 7, Sunday. How about these 1 o'clock games that are staying 1 o'clock? Texans at Packers, right? And Lions Vikings, 4-1 versus 5-0. Those are two amazing 1 o'clock games right there.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't have the I'll look for the flex schedule rules. That the NFL sent me a couple releases on Tuesday. Let me see if they have the rules.
The regional 425 is Chiefs 49ers. So you imagine that that's going to stay there.
And I know there's blocking and
Right.
networks of block, but I just wanted to see if there's any. They usually send us all the rules on flex schedule. But anyway, nevertheless, we'll talk about it another time.
Yeah.
So we can get moving here. But yeah, you're right, boy. And the Vikings, the Vikings. Who the hell saw this? I mean, Flores is phenomenal. He's to me, he might be I would say Ben Johnson. It's ironic. This is what's great about it. Ben Johnson, the NFL's best OC. He's phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And Brian Flores, the best defensive line. I can't wait for this. And here's the funny for fantasy. Do I bench the Vikings D, which I was smart enough to pick up very early on? Nobody was on them. No one believed it because they're not very talented.
Yeah.
But it's scheme and coaching.
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell to do, whether I should bench them or not. So I got to think about that.
Yeah. Well, how are you going to be able to watch that game and watch Eagles at the same time? It's just too much. It's not like Eagles Giants is a snooze fest. I mean, it might be a snooze fest the way you watch it, but that's usually like an exciting game for the Northeast.
Yeah, I know the Eagles for last dozen or so years have had great success, but not so much recently. So against the Giants, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, you're right. The 1 o'clock window, there's some really good games.
Yeah, some good games. All right, Eagles transactions. I don't remember if we talked about it in the post game. I wanted to get to this before even the other offensive line thing, but Nick Gates was inactive in that game, right?
Yeah.
And so I think we did talk about it. I just wonder if he's going to be. Why did this? I'm very confused by some of their moves, because if you're inactivating him, you're saying we can then play with Dickerson as our center if Jurgens gets hurt, right? So then, why did you feel compelled to bring Gates to your practice squad? Because you had to make a move. I forget who they released when they did it, but it was maybe EJ Jenkins. I don't know. But the point is, they're going to eventually have to make room, you would think, for Sidney Brown and Anaya Smith whenever each one is ready, or either already. And does Nick Gates become that guy with all the depth now that they have in the practice squad with Jack Stoll back? Now he was elevated for the game. He goes back to the practice squad now. So he's got 2 elevations left. They still have Kennard. I'm sorry, Jack Driscoll. I may have
Yeah. Jack Driscoll's up. He reverted back. So I know he's a guard right now. Could Driscoll play center?
I remember.
Didn't he?
It's a great question. I remember the reason the Eagles liked him out of Auburn via UConn, if I'm not mistaken,
or UMass.
Was because UMass, right? He's from Connecticut, has his jersey hanging in Pepe's Pizza in New Haven.
Does he really?
Yes, he does. He does.
Funny. I didn't know that. Okay.
They liked his athleticism. They thought he was almost not big enough to play tackle and athletic enough to play guard, even though he was a tackle his last year, I believe, at Auburn. But they thought the athleticism could translate to center, but I don't know that he ever repped or snapped there. Maybe in an OTA or something.
I remember you saying that. Yeah.
But I don't think that that's in their mind right now.
Yeah, so I'm not sure, honestly, if I'm kind of blown away, but I know they love Driscoll. I know that Stout loves him.
Right.
But it is kind of weird because Gates, the reason why Gates came here, as I understood it at the time, is that he'd be able to be the top backup interior lineman, or at least one of them, that he'd be able to be up on game day, and if someone got hurt, he'd go in. But that didn't happen, and he was inactive. Yeah, boy, that surprised me. I wonder he. I wonder if there's an injury or any. He wasn't on the injury report. I checked leading up. We'll see what
Yeah.
happens. Paris Campbell, by the way, someone threw out on Twitter that he was hurt. He didn't. He was active but didn't play. So I don't know what the story was. We'll see if he's listed on Wednesday on the injury report. But yeah, that was interesting. And then so Paris Campbell's on the 53, and then they did on Tuesday. They signed Perry Nickerson, who was with them in the pre to the practice squad. He was with them, yeah, in the preseason. He was with Vic Fangio with the Dolphins, so obviously they know the player.
He was with the Eagles in training camp too.
Right, but he was with the season before. He was with Vic and
yes,
with the Dolphins.
Yep. And yeah, so that's an extra corner onto the practice squad. So those are the transactions, and I you know, obviously the big curiosity is when Sidney Brown's ready, you know, to join the 53. When Anaya Smith, who are the one or the two that are going to get chopped from the 53 to be a corresponding move. And based on what the Eagles have done so far with some of their transactions, it's not like you mentioned, they signed Paris Campbell for wide receiver depth, and they basically lived in 12 personnel for that entire game. I mean, it was sort of surprising. Like I don't think I only counted. I don't even think I got 5 snaps of Jahan Dotson in the first half. I don't know how many snaps he played overall.
22.
But half,
22.
Yeah, because
overall.
they opened it up a little bit more as the game went on. But in the first half, they were very, very hardcore 12 personnel team.
Yeah, now part of it could have been matchup based because of Garrett. They wanted to make sure they chipped him.
Mm-hmm.
That certainly could have been the case. And Garrett, they look, they had their hands full with him. He had the block field goal, but yeah, I would say overall, I was a little surprised. And although Dotson had 2 big plays, both plays were impactful. No, one of the plays, I don't know why he went out of bounds. That was weird.
Mm-hmm.
Should have looked upfield, but hey, he still made 2 plays. First 2 plays he's really made for them.
Yeah.
Other than the setting the natural pick against the Saints, I always laugh at that because it's like the only thing he'd done before that.
The most major contribution to the team. Yeah.
Yeah, they need more out of him. So anyway, moving forward here, we'll see what they do this week. But they got injury concerns. That's the story of the week is injuries. There's no question.
Yeah. So let's get to these injuries. The big one, Jordan Mailata, he will be out. I believe he was called a week to week with the hamstring injury. I tell you, it's never good when you see a tackle who has a hamstring leaving on crutches and in a boot. That was pretty tough. So, and he's a big dude. I don't know if that affects big guys harder than little guys. I don't know, but he's going to be out for a couple of weeks, and that's rough for the team.
At least. It was good of Sirianni to be good about it and give the reporters information. That was good because they saw him on crutches. So I mean,
it would have been hard to.
I would hate if he would have done what Chip Kelly would do when he go. I haven't talked to the docs yet. Come on.
Oh, really? Right. I haven't talked to
annoy the hell out of me. I remember he tried to he downplayed something. I'd put a report out when I was at ESPN that DeMarco Murray went for the Kobe Bryant treatment, the PRP, plasma replacement therapy. Anyway, and we don't. He said something like, "We don't know that yet." I'm like, okay,
yeah.
But the bottom line is Jordan's going to miss some time. Fred Johnson replaced him. See, the thing with Fred Johnson is, before we get the other injuries, he's done a great job. He did a great job the 2 games where he came off the bench, but asking him to start a game, that's to me, I know a lot of people, probably including us, would just assume he's going to start. But the other option is to move Becton over there. Obviously, we know he was drafted as a left tackle.
And then play Steen at right guard.
And Greg said a couple weeks, he was blown away. Like he thought the tape was great. I know it was off the bench, but he said the tape was great. Come off the bench.
I wonder what you would think it would be harder to come off the bench and play than start when you have.
I know you didn't take the reps for the ones. Yeah.
I would say, I mean, because Fred Johnson's more of a left. I mean, he's practiced more at left tackle with the Eagles right tackle. You're putting him back in his comfortable spot. The Eagles have wanted to avoid in the past the whole weakening of 2 positions by moving one, but we've seen already this year that they've done it when Juergens went out and Dickerson went to center. So maybe there is something to that of just getting who you think your best 5 are on the field. But I mean, you gave Johnson that like a little contract extension. He's here. He's your top backup tackle. If you don't use him, then that shows that you don't really have faith in him. Then why is he on your team?
Well, no, but here's
especially when you have Driscoll and Darian Kennard. You have 3 other guys who can play tackle.
Well, the Tampa game, right? The Tampa game, was not good. I mean, that's what I meant about starting, a full game. If Fred played right tackle that game for
Right.
Lane, and
Right.
it wasn't great. It wasn't good.
Right.
So that's we'll see. The smart money, as some people would say, would be on Fred Johnson. I'm not saying it's a lock. We're going to look into it. We'll have more on our pregame show with Greg. But Jordan left the game after 49 snaps. He left in the fourth quarter, and Fred Johnson replaced him. And Fred's a guy who has started games over his career, and he's a big guy over 6'7". This has been a Stoutland development player. This is a good story where he talked about his career and where it was going, wasn't going great, and Stout believed him. It's a real story. And then with Darius Slay, the word we got it, we were told to say just consider him questionable.
Okay.
I don't know. We're not going to till later in the week. You're talking about the oldest starting corner of 30 out of 64 starting outside corners. He's the oldest, nearly 34 years old. He turns 34 in January. We know he's super durable. He played 29 snaps. He never came in. Back, Isaiah Rodgers saw almost all the snaps. Ringo only saw six snaps. Rodgers runs better. He's a more fluid athlete, but he's much smaller than Ringo. Ringo's longer.
Mm-hmm.
So again, this is another one where Rodgers, the smart money should be on Rodgers, but it's not a lock. They'll have to get through practice this week, and then they'll get better idea. The practice week is Wednesday and Thursday and Friday for this week. And we'll see if Slay can get in there and practice. And then we'll go from there. So look, they're in a tough way, man. This is, if Goddard's out, we'll get to him. You've got it just so happened they resigned Uzama last week to the practice squad. Just so happened. So Uzama obviously would be called up for the game to be the third tight end if Goddard's out. He left after 3 snaps. First series, he never returned last week.
It felt like such a one step forward, 2 steps back type ordeal to get your wide receivers back and then lose Dallas Goedert that early.
Yeah,
I will say,
remember,
Calcaterra made some nice plays. I mean, sometimes we make a big deal out he was wide open twice off play. One of them was off a play action that he's so wide open, like you would almost, if the play wasn't made for that kind of yards and catch, you would be blasting either him for dropping it or Jalen for making a bad throw. That's how easy it was. But he did contribute, and they did try to decoy him a couple of times as an inline blocker without actually having to use him as a blocker. So they're figuring out ways to work around Calcaterra, but it just sucks. I mean, Goddard does a lot for them, even that doesn't impact the stat sheet.
And the pass and run game. Oh yeah, he's impactful in both. So Calcaterra could run. He's an athlete. We know that. I mean, wow. He saw 92% of the offensive snaps, which is obviously a career high.
Right.
Wow. That was interesting. Johnny Wilson played his 4 blocking snaps. You knew he was going to do that if he was going to play. They only used 4 receivers. Paris Kimmel dressed but did not play.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what happens here. This is it's tough. And the Giants, man, they're getting after it this year. We'll talk more about it in our pregame show later in the week. But no, I know that they did play Cleveland. Deshaun Watson is a human sack machine. I mean, he really is. He takes so many bad sacks. So but
they put some pressure on Burrow, though.
They did
a good job. Yeah.
Aziz Ojulari. How do you say it? Ojulari, yeah. Aziz Ojulari. I can't say it. What the hell's wrong?
I'm gonna make a drop out of this.
I know. I used to be the one who would correct you and go, dude, no, dude, it's like this.
She's on the other foot.
Ojulari, yeah. Ojulari.
Ojulari.
Yeah, I got it. I don't know what the hell my problem is. Anyway, so Ojulari had 2 sacks. They got after it. Yeah, and Shane Bowen he's not a high blitz percentage guy. Completely different from what they're used to with Wink Martindale.
Right.
We go.
But they do a lot of stuff up front. He will disguise, and he will twist it. And I tell you, the best kind of guy to use when you're going to play a lot of line games is Brian Burns, because that guy moves like a cat.
He's bendy.
Yes.
It's so funny because you know how fans overreact. So Giant fans were killing the GM, Joe Shane, because Burns got off to a really slow start.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, we got burned. The stuff like social. I get a good kick out of people go out of their minds and they just they live game by game and like to kill front offices and coaches for a bad game, whatever. And Burns is coming on. It's not just the stats; it's what he does to offensive lines and pressure rate and all that. No, he's a player, man. Actually the Giants did pretty well not to give up a first round pick. They did actually a pretty good job.
They did, absolutely. All right, so we'll see. Obviously, that a big marquee matchup will be Burns versus Fred Johnson if it's Fred at left tackle there. So that'll be something to look out for. Do you suspect, as we close it off with injuries? I mean, if Slay can't make it, I would think Isaiah Rogers. I wonder if any rotation Vic would have in
Mhm.
mind, because Rogers is going to give up a little bit of height and size to guys like Slayton, guys like Neighbors. I don't know how tall Jalen Hyatt is, but either way, Ringo is stiffer, and you probably don't want him. You definitely don't want him man on man too much on Neighbors or a Wandale, but he also is more physical. He put a nice hit, as we saw on Pierre Strong. So I wonder if there will be some situational way around Slay if Slay doesn't play, or if it's just Isaiah Rogers the whole game and you do what you do.
I would think it would be Rogers. Here's why. Assuming Neighbors is back now, he started practicing late last week. If he gets out of the protocol, got Slayton, who's really could fly. I mean, he was drafted with Daniel Jones. So another timing has not always been there. They had a big 50-yard play got called back for it was off of RPO. That was bad. The lineman got upfield, which you can't do. But Neighbors could run, Slayton could run, Wandale could run. Jalen Hyatt's the fastest receiver. So they got four guys who could run. Oh, by the way, your guy Theo Johnson could run, the rookie tight end from Penn State.
Yes, he can.
And they're a 11 personnel team. Here we go. We'll see what happens.
All right, Adam, before we move on, I know that a lot of people are looking forward to the Sixers and the NBA this season. We're already in preseason basketball. Now, let's just casually ignore the fact that already we found out that Embiid doesn't plan to play the second game on back-to-backs, or that Paul George has already hurt his knee. Let's just ignore all that and get really excited, because this Sixer season could be an amazing one with the addition of Paul George and everybody else that they've brought in. And maybe they get over the hump. And we know that there is nothing like the hype and the atmosphere of watching a basketball game live, especially a Sixers game. You'll see celebrities in the front row. You get those momentum swings and the crowd goes wild. It is an unbelievable experience. And if you want to get the best tickets to Sixers games, you got to use the Game Time app. They've got a new feature called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets to see your favorite team play live even easier, because it filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. If I'm going to get Sixers tickets, I'm looking for those super deals that they offer on Game Time that gives you the best value for the row or the area of the arena that you're watching it in there down in South Philly. So there's just so many ways to get tickets, and it's so easy. It's so user friendly. You're also covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. They've got the lowest price guarantee, where great Game Time credits you 110% of the difference if you find a lower price. There's event cancellation protection. There's job loss protection. So many great reasons to use the Game Time app. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code BIRDS for $20 off your first purchase. That is terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code BIRDS, BIRDS, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, Adam. Also, remember, our Patreon members, they get all of our podcasts early the night before and ad free. It's a great reason to be part of our Patreon channel, our Patreon community, along with Ask Greg Cosell live stream we had Tuesday night. We do live streams Wednesday nights for our Patreon members. Ask an Eagle coming up later this month, working on that, and our Chalk Talk series. So much great bonus content, all ad free, all early than the mainstream gets it. So I don't know what you're waiting for. If you're not part of it yet, it's patreon.com/inside the birds.
One thing, I want to thank Bruce, who just became he signed up for a yearly membership. We love that. We appreciate you, Bruce, for doing that, which you can
Discount
do,
for that, by the way.
Yeah, the discount's significant, by the way. I just was looking at that. I'm like, wow, that's a really good discount. Dave, who joined us, Joe Kavanaugh, who just upgraded, and I hope we see you guys on the live stream. Say hello, man. I love it, don't you, when new people come in, that because it's funny. Sometimes they sign up, it'll say like they'll come in the live stream and say Apple phone 51. We don't know who
Yeah.
that is.
Like, who's that? With no
Is
picture.
that Cam Jurgens? Like, who's that? Yeah, exactly.
I like it. It's become an international live. Well, I don't want to say international, but we get people in from every single. No, we've had Canada. It's international.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
we're good.
Jason, who's in every isn't Jason who's in every
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Vancouver, something like that.
I
Anyway,
think Calgary.
Calgary, yeah, Calgary,
Yeah.
Alberta.
All right. So Giants, we'll give you the early word on them. We started talking about them a little bit. Now they've been missing, and watching their offense, you could tell, well, at least not against the Seahawks, but definitely against the Bengals. You could tell that they were not at full strength. They've been without Malik Neighbors, who missed the last two games with a concussion. Devin Singletary has been out the last two games with a groin. Now, as you can always tell with young teams, they always have somebody that they're trying to develop, and they had a nice little running back play from Purdue, Tyrone Tracy. I remember watching him. He has filled in and done some nice things for them, Adam.
Yeah, Tyrone Tracy's been a good story. He's filled in, did very well for Singletary. Eric Gray, a fifth rounder, backs him up, who was a fifth rounder last year. Tracy, a fifth rounder this year, as you mentioned. And then other than we'll see if Singletary's missed the last two games could get back this week. I know they're optimistic that he'll practice. Neighbors has missed their last two games with a concussion. So Jalen Hyatt became their third receiver. They're a heavy 11 personnel team. They got a lot of speed, but the big injury is Andrew Thomas, who hurt his foot. Josh Zudu, who has played three positions for them, a right tackle, left tackle, and guard. He is their backup left tackle. He's he's under 6'5".
Mm-hmm.
Thomas is elite, but they struggled last year without him when he had the hamstring problems. And then they changed their kicker Graham Gano went on IR with a groin and hamstring. He actually, 1 week he hurt the groin, the next week he hurt the hamstring, so he went on IR. Greg Joseph, you might remember from the Vikings, he's filling in. Their punter, this is crazy. Their punter, Jamie Gillen, who the Eagles know, he had that crazy dropped snap a couple years ago. He was out last week. Matt Hawk filled in. How about this? And I don't know if this has ever happened to the Eagles. They're facing back-to-back left-footed punters.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That is no wonder why they brought that kid in last week for
Maybe that's what was that kid's weird name? I don't remember it.
I don't remember. Somebody reached out and said, do those guys get paid for those workouts?
Yeah, I was told per diem and travel.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I didn't get this. I didn't get that they actually get paid for it.
Yeah. You basically get the travel and you get a dinner.
Yeah.
For helping us with left-footed punters.
Yep.
I'll take it.
Exactly. Hell yeah. I was joking with someone many years ago that I'll give me 50 grand. I'll return kicks. Just knock me out. I'll be good.
Yeah.
I'll recover for a week. I might be dead, but
yeah, I'm sure the per diem is pretty good too. It ain't like our normal corporations we've worked for per diem.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's like,
the NovaCare food is phenomenal. I can tell you that. And then defensively, the big ones, Kayvon Thibodeau was on IR with a wrist injury. Aziz Ojolari, as we talked about earlier, who's bendy, is explosive. They're getting after it, and they're not going to be a heavy blitz team. It's a coverage-based defense with disguise. So you're right, man. This is an intriguing matchup. They're better than they were last year. The Giants are certainly. The Eagles faced them late last season. It didn't look good.
Yeah. And listen, you go out to Seattle and win. That's impressive.
That's a crazy game.
You come home to play the Bengals, and of course they're offensively defunct. So I'm not going to say that it's an impressive loss, but they gave up a kind of a fluky long touchdown run to Burrow. Yeah. And then basically shut it down. The Bengals only scored 10 points after that. And, there were some big connections to Chase and Higgins, but it wasn't like they went crazy. I mean, they only scored 17 points.
And only had 13 first downs, the Bengals.
Right.
I mean, they did a really good, this Giants defense is no joke. They're not very good at corner. That's where you think you could beat them if they could protect. Safeties, they've kind of revamped their secondary. Like, again, they're running a different scheme, so it's not something that you'd have to go back to the Titans tape because Bowen's running his version of it's sort of a lot of what Mike Vrabel was running, the New England scheme, plus whatever else he's learned in his career. But he was a Mike Vrabel disciple. They were together with the Texans, so not going to be easy. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and by the way, Daniel Jones running very well this year, coming off that ACL injury. He's always ran well against the Eagles. I remember when we did the pregame show, either last year or 2 years ago. It was before he obviously got hurt. And I had a graphic that showed the top 5 rushers against the Eagles from like 2020 until 2023. And Daniel Jones was third. Like everybody else was a running back, and Daniel Jones ranked third with rushing yards against the Eagles over the last 5 years. And now last game, you saw him take off 11 times for 56 yards. So he looks explosive. They're using him. Brian Daboll was using him to run the way he used Josh Allen to run, as far as design keepers, getting him out on the edges, getting him up the middle, like the way the Eagles try to use Jalen Hurts. So Really interesting part of the game there that you have to watch out for.
Yeah, his straight line speed, Daniel Jones, it's kind of like wow, and man, a guy coming off. I remember I forget who the hell did they play week one? Let me see right real quick.
Giants played.
Yeah.
Oh, they got destroyed by the Vikings week one, if I'm not mistaken.
It was one of the first two games I watched them. I was like, are they crazy? These guys come off an ACL. But I know he looks good. I
Might
saw
have been
him.
that Washington game where they gave up 7 field goals, I think, and lost.
He just I was like, wow, because I saw him in training camp where they had a joint practice with the Lions, and I watched him. I'm like, wow, he looks pretty healthy. But you
Mhm.
just wouldn't think coming off an ACL, but like, oh, hell no, we don't care. We're gonna run him. So that's coming. The Eagles know him. He knows them, and we'll see what happens. Very fast at receiver. They just haven't quite gotten it. Because if Neighbors is able to play with this group and they could run, Wandale Robinson's a good player. He's more of a
Yeah.
short area, run after the catch explosive guy. We
Hmm.
know Hyatt's explosive. He's just finesse. And a lot of people in scouting thought just didn't compete high enough. And that's why he didn't go higher, but he can run. And Theo Johnson, this is a good group here. Don't take them lightly.
Nope. No, they got to take them seriously. Other Eagles can't take anybody lightly. Now
Yeah.
they got to get right. All right,
Yeah.
we got one last thing to cover. Before we do that, we're going to pause and hear a word from our great friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you happen to go into SkyMotorCars.com or happen to go into Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. If not, you go to SkyMotorCars.com. Whichever one you do, you're going to get a great car buying experience. Way better than what the car buying experience is at any other place because you just get such great customer service with
Service.
Sky Motor.
Yeah, you got to read the reviews. It's really remarkable. And if you follow them on IG, it's great because you see the people. They're right next to the car. They seem to be happy to let people know. It's pretty cool when the customers are happy to get their picture taken. It's pretty cool. Good for them.
Yeah, definitely. Adam, we to finish this out, sometimes we look around the state of the NFC East here. The Cowboys, I mean, if the fan isn't happy with their win and they're still upset, at least they got a chance to see just how destructive that game was. I've heard this theory that this is that game between the Lions and the Cowboys, a rematch of the Thanksgiving game where the refs took away a touchdown from the Lions, remember, because they had the extra tackle eligible trick play.
Oh,
So,
Dan Skipper, yeah, the bald
yeah,
guy.
yeah. So I've heard it said that the Lions wanted to prove a point because if you watch
Yeah.
that, I mean, they were pulling out tricks up galore and scoring it up on the Cowboys. But the Cowboys they look bad right now. They look
Two
really
things.
bad.
They do. How about the Jerry Jones meltdown? Unbelievable. On he does this weekly radio show.
Yeah.
He was bizarre. Number one, if you're social media, you can find the clip. You got to play it. If you hate the Cowboys, like probably everyone listening, you got to hear it. And number two, I put this on Twitter Sunday night. People didn't quite realize how bad it was. Or an X. Their last 4 home games, including the Green Bay game, they've given up 167 points in 4 games. That's impossible.
That is
41.5 points per game at home.
Oh my God. That is really bad.
What
That's
the
like
what's going on around here?
that's like Eagles defense first 5 games under Jonathan Gannon. That's remember how awful that was? That might even be worse. Yeah, it's really bad. It's really bad.
There was a running joke around the NFL. If you had Washington in your division, you love Daniel Snyder owning the team because you know they begin a train wreck. Well, as long as Jerry Jones is running the show, he's a GM owner. You know they're always going to have problems.
Yeah. As far as Washington, they went down on the NFL preview weekly preview that I do each week. I said I felt that the Ravens would cover the 6.5. They did, but I also said I thought Washington would hang in there until maybe too late, and that's how it went. It was a pretty close game, and then Derrick Henry took over late third, fourth quarter, but I still think you come out of that game thinking Washington's pretty formidable. I mean, they've got resolve. They're not going to be a rollover for anybody.
No, I worry about their defense. And they're not deep receiver. They have to do something to help Daniels out.
Yep.
McLaurin's been great, but they need to help him out. Noah Brown is starting. I mean, Noah Brown, you'd rather be him your fourth receiver than a starter.
Right.
But they need pass rushers. Dante Fowler's been a nice story. He had 2 sacks last week. He's been a good story for them, but they need more help on defense. But they're way ahead of schedule, man. I did not think they'd be this competitive. It's a good story.
Absolutely. Well, they won't be able to get 2 receivers as Amari Cooper goes to the Bills to play with Josh Allen. And then, as we all saw coming, Devontae Adams going to the Jets to reunite with Aaron Rodgers. 2 big trades in a big, big week of NFL football. Big week coming up for the Eagles against the Giants. We'll make sure we have it all covered everywhere on Inside the Birds, InsideTheBirds.com. That's going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the Bird. Be sure to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation.